Good afternoon, everyone. I've prepared a presentation. I will guide you through, I believe, the first 4 slides of the presentation. Then afterwards, I'm going to switch to demoing the software because that's always a lot more interesting than watching a presentation. We will include, however, the presentation in the email that we send to you after the webinar because it contains a lot of the highlights of the product that I want to share with you today. So I'm not going to go through all of it here, but you will get the content afterwards. Together with that, we will also record the webinar. We have a habit of recording all of these webinars, and normally you can find those afterwards on the website, either the 4Ps or the callas software website, but we'll also include the link in the email that we send out to all of the attendees. Now, to start this off, this is the first webinar of a pair of webinars about the callas pdfToolbox product line. This one will talk about pdfToolbox desktop. The one on Thursday, so 2 days from now, we'll talk about pdfToolbox server and CLI and so on. So this one is about manual processing of files. On Thursday, we'll talk about automated processing of files. If I can give away some of the highlights already, of course, everything I show today that you can do manually, you will also be able to do automatically, and we'll show you exactly how on Thursday. But let's start with pdfToolbox desktop. I have included just a few introductory slides. Most of you probably know who callas is, but as a quick reminder, they're based out of Berlin, Germany. The company was founded in 1995. They're actually a sister company, if that is a correct term, of Axio Software, who focuses more on the somewhat more editorial part of the workflow, so conversion, for example, of InDesign and Quark Express documents to proper PDF, PostScript, and so on. Callas focuses only on the PDF side of the equation, PDF production side. They have been doing so since the start in 1995, and as of 2011, they are now focusing only on software development and the OEM relationships that they have. They work together with us, with 4Ps, and we at 4Ps actually do all of the sales, marketing, and related activities. That includes customer support. If you send an email to support@callassoftware.com, that email will end up with 4Ps, and we will do second and in many cases third line support, and then any problems, of course, are finally fixed by callas in the development group. So 3 slides to position what we're going to talk about today. The first one is to talk about product lines. Callas Software has 2 product lines, pdfToolbox and pdfAPilot. If you look at those 2 solutions, and you are able to do so because there are fully functional trial versions of the solutions on the Callas Software website. If you look at the solutions, you'll see that they are quite similar in terms of technology. They differ a lot in terms of intended market, though. pdfAPilot is oriented towards the archival, which is more enterprise, government, libraries, and so on market, so the archival market. pdfToolbox, which we're going to look at today, is oriented towards graphic arts, print and publishing. So same technology, different market. If we look at pdfToolbox, like I already indicated, there are then 2 different products in that product line. One is pdfToolbox Desktop, which is the operator version. In other words, someone sitting behind a computer having to fix a PDF file or check a PDF file. The other one is the server version, which allows you to do unattended processing of files. So manual processing versus automation. Today, we're focusing on the manual processing part. On Thursday, we'll focus on the automation. And then lastly, there are two flavors of pdfToolbox Desktop. What I will be using in my demo is what you see on the left-hand side, which is a standalone version of pdfToolbox. What you see on the right-hand side is the plugin inside of Acrobat. When you buy and install pdfToolbox Desktop, or when you install a trial version, you actually install or have the option to install both versions. And whether you want to open PDF files in Acrobat and use the functionalities of pdfToolbox inside of Acrobat, or prefer to use a standalone version, that is totally up to you. Both are installed, both are usable. You can switch between them at your leisure. Functionality is almost exactly the same. Of course, the plugin lives within Adobe Acrobat, and as such, that can either be a blessing because it's a known environment, or it can be a curse because you have the whole Adobe Acrobat, much more complex user interface around it. On the native, the desktop version, the standalone version, you only have pdfToolbox desktop functionality, and the product is a lot simpler as a result. Okay, so let me close this, and we'll go to the application, which is always a lot more fun. And there are actually a number of different big parts in the application that I need to show you. And let me preface by saying that, of course, I'm only going to show you a very small part of what you can do with pdfToolbox. This webinar is supposed to last half an hour. I will try and keep to that time limit, but you understand that there are many more features. There are a lot more details I could be talking about, and we'll focus on some of the highlights here. If you look at pdfToolbox Desktop, what you see is a main window, and I can simply take a PDF file and drag that on top of the main window, and you'll get a very good representation of that PDF file. Why do I stress that? Well, pdfToolbox includes quite a bit of technology that is licensed from Adobe. The rendering engine that is used to show these PDF files, for example, is actually Adobe licensed technology. Vice versa, Callas licenses a big part of its technology back to Adobe. If you look at the pre-flight plugin that is available in Acrobat Pro, that plugin is actually created by Callas, licensed by Callas to Adobe. Why do I say you get a good preview of the PDF? Well, because that's the case. What pdfToolbox Desktop does is focus on how a PDF file should look in a graphic arts environment. And that means that things like transparencies, but also overprint preview, using local fonts, and all of those things that are important are automatically correct. And what you see is the same view as what you would normally get when you send that file to a RIP. It's an important thing to consider. Also, one other point, because I mentioned Adobe technology, it is not because Callas uses Adobe technology that you actually need Adobe Acrobat or Distiller or any of the other Creative Suite applications to be installed on the system. If you don't have Creative Suite, you don't have Reader, you don't have Acrobat, then I can still use the standalone version of pdfToolbox Desktop, which sometimes can also be a very big asset. I already see at the bottom here that this is a graphic arts tool. Why? Because it labels this file as a pdfx1a file, so it reads the tags that you find in a PDF that identify it as a pdfx1a. Of course, I would still have to pre-flight it to make sure. It also indicates what the output intent is, and in this case, it's a Gantt workgroup output intent that has been included in this PDF file. Now, what I already have open, because this is the window that you probably will use the most in pdfToolbox Desktop, is the switchboard. And the switchboard has kind of an iPhone-ish user interface. You may think that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is very useful and easy because it has different groups of functionality at its home screen: arrange, functionality around standards, fonts, colors, pages, document, and then each of those buttons, if I click those, gives me a range of different functionality in that area. The Arrange button, for example, combines a number of different things that have to do with impositioning, combining documents, splitting pages, and so on and so on. So how does that work? Well, let me illustrate that very briefly with an example file. Let me drag another file on here. This is a file that has a single first page, but the rest of the document is 2 pages. So this has been exported from InDesign with reader spreads switched on. Well, if I go to split in half, for example, that is a feature that is designed specifically to split such 2-page pages that come out of InDesign into single pages. You can see that this particular option has no choices that I can make. It will work completely automatically, and all I have to do is either press the execute button or the batch button. What's the difference? Execute will run this functionality on the file that is currently open. Batch will allow me to pick a folder, and it will process all of the files in that folder. Now, that sounds like automation, so it sounds like a topic for Thursday. In fact, it's very limited automation. This will work on all of the documents that you have in that folder, and then it will stop. So this is not the same as fully unattended processing, where you have a hot folder that is continuously being watched. This is simply for those cases where you get 10 documents from someone, you have those documents in the folder, and you want to apply the same action to all of the documents in that folder. But we have a document open here, so let me do execute, and when I run that, it will run through the document. In this case, I asked it to split pages, and if I now run through the document, you'll see that I have single pages. So now I could go back to Arrange, look at the other functionality here, and for example, there is a booklet function that lets me make a booklet out of a PDF file. I needed to split pages in half first, because otherwise I could not make a proper booklet. But now I can do that. You can see that this time I do have options. I could take a specific page size, or I can leave it at minimal size, which will automatically calculate the page size that I need in my booklet. You can add additional offsets, and I can say execute, and that then gives me a file that is now laid out so that I can print it and create a booklet. Sometimes pdfToolbox Desktop will ask you to save the file before it does an action. In this case, it simply did the actions, and now when I close it, it will ask me, do you want to save those changes? This is a demo, so I'm going to say no in this particular case. But that gives you the idea of what the switchboard is. You have these different areas with different functionality, and like I said, for example, under Arrange, you have very easy to use imposition functionality. You also have, and that is something that you'll see come back in many places in pdfToolbox, you also have a way to run more complex imposition layouts. So I have very easy functionality. If you want to, I can also do much more complex things. In this case, the impose feature uses 2 files, what is called a sheet configuration file and an imposition scheme or run list file. These 2 configuration files together determine how the document is going to be imposed. There are a number of default options included in the software, but of course I can also make my own imposition layouts. So Arrange is one important part of the functionality. Let me show you one other that combines functionality that you find under Document, and that is conversion of Office to PDF, and something that we find in Present. And I'll start with the Office to PDF functionality. I can take any Office files. This will work for PowerPoint, Word, Excel, and so on. I can take any of these files, drag them on top of the pdfToolbox window that automatically opens PowerPoint for me. It opened the PowerPoint file in PowerPoint, did an export, a good export to PDF. I end up with a file that contains that PowerPoint presentation, 1 slide per page. Now, I can either leave it at that, or I can say go to present. This is functionality that has to do with presentations. This could be useful in your workflow, or it could not be. In this case, I'm going to run handouts. Again, say execute, and I end up with a file that now has a title page, and the rest of the pages consists of 3 slides out of my presentation with room for notes at the right-hand side of the slide. So again, very little configuration to be done, very easy to use functionality. And this is a common theme in the switchboard. The switchboard offers you very easy to use functionality in all kinds of different areas, going from impositioning to document conversions to fonts to color to images and so on. But in all cases, the number of options that you have, but also the customizability that you have, is limited. The stress here is on easy to use and not on let me do whatever I can do with the application. Give me all of the possibilities. For that, we'll look at something else. I'm going to show you one more function in here that is really useful, and that is the image export. That allows me to, and this is just to show you that pdfToolbox is not limited to simple PDF processing, but you also have a number of functions that do a little bit more than simply open a PDF and change that PDF. In this case, I can, for example, say, create a PNG file, make that an RGB PNG. I want a certain resolution, and this can be as low or high as you want. I'm going to simulate overprint. If I drag that on here and do execute, it will ask me to save, and that will save me a PNG file that looks exactly the same as that PDF file that I had. Now, for a single page, that is relatively easy to do, but of course, if I have a multi-page PDF, it will give me 1 image per page in the PDF. And of course, what I'll tell you on Thursday is that we can take this functionality and automate that using hot folders or using a command line interface, and then it becomes really, really useful to have something like that. The easiest way to explore pdfToolbox and to see what the different functionalities are is really to look at the switchboard, click on the area that you're interested in, and say, oh, so I want to do something with spot color. Well, let me open it up. There is a description of what that function does at the top of the switchboard every time, and then I can play with that functionality and see if it can do what I want it to do. Now, let me move to a different part of the software by starting to look at standards. Standards gives me, again, it's the switchboard, so easy to use. It gives me the most common ISO standards and Gantt workgroup standards to run on my file. And now I can say, this is a magazine ad. Again, you can see no options, run execute, and this will run a pre-flight profile with a number of fixes and checks. We'll run that on the file. I should rename that so it doesn't overwrite the original. There we go. So it runs that pre-flight profile. It will run all of the fixes in the profile on the file and will run all of the pre-flight checks. And then at the end, it tells me either this is good or not good. If it's not good, I have a report. And that report, first of all, in this window shows me what was fixed, what the errors were, and what the warnings were. I have very useful functionality here with show and snap, where I can get a separate window. And now if I look at these error messages, it will show me exactly where those error messages come from. So I can run over each of these errors and identify very quickly what the objects are that cause a particular problem. Of course, this is very nice to interactively go through a document and look at what went wrong. But of course, I can also say create report, and let me include details and choose for a comment report for this demo. Save that on my desktop. There we go. And let me actually open this up in Acrobat so that you can see, open it up in Acrobat. And this is what a customer potentially could see. There is a first page with a summary of that same information that you saw in the report window. You have fixes errors and warnings, and then file information, processing information. But then also it will include every page with errors or warnings. And on top of that page, you have Acrobat annotations, and each of these annotations lists exactly what the error is with that particular problem. So for example, this was a warning for resolution of images. The red one was an error referring to a problem with the font that was used in this particular file. So the switchboard under the standards section allows you to run custom or default rather pre-flight profiles. Those profiles will then give you a report in the window in pdfToolbox desktop, or if you choose to save that, it will give you a PDF report. Now, you can also save a text or an XML report, but that is really a topic for the automation session on Thursday. It's not something that you would typically use in pdfToolbox desktop. But for testing purposes, it is great that you can generate those as well. Now, of course, there comes a time when the switchboard kind of doesn't do exactly what you want to do. And then it's time to go to the next step in the application. And if I open up the profiles window, then this will show you what that next step is. And if I go to prepress, I then have the magazine ads profiles here. Well, this is the profile that is run behind that button on the switchboard. And if I open that up, you can see how a profile looks in pdfToolbox. You have a number of custom things that you can check for. So this is customized UI with specific checks, but I have, and this is the most important part, I have a section here that says custom checks. This lists all of the different checks that are run on a document, and for each of them you can see that they are either set to warning or to error. I also have a section that is called fix-ups, and that then shows you all of the different fix-ups in this document, all of the things that need to be corrected or that you want to be corrected in that document. And of course, you have full control over these profiles. I can unlock this one, and I can say discarding smoothness. Well, that's not something I want to do. And then I simply press that arrow and it will be removed from this profile. Or I can browse the list of all of the different fix-ups that were created already, or even create a new fix-up, and then include that fix-up into the list of fix-ups in this profile. So a profile allows you to build a custom set of things that you want to correct to a PDF file and things that you want to check in a PDF file. And executing a profile is very simple. Do we want to discard? Yes. Executing that will be selecting the profile that you want, and then either do analyze or analyze and fix. The difference is obvious. If I choose analyze and fix, the corrections will be run as well. If I select analyze, then the file will not be changed, only checked. Now, you can build profiles to for things that are really pre-flights, checking files and automatically correcting them if something goes wrong. But of course, I can also build specialty profiles with specific fixes in them. For example, I could build a profile that automatically fixes spot color that is found in the file. How much you fix, what exactly you do in a profile is exactly your choice. And once you're done, I can select a profile and say export, and then it will create a KFBX file for me. And that file can be exchanged with someone else or could be used in an automated solution like pdfToolbox Server. Now, profiles are not the only thing that you can use in pdfToolbox. On the other hand, I also have, let me go to my group here. I also have, let me show you this one, process plans. And the process plan lives in the same window as the profiles. It is also treated as a profile in most operations in pdfToolbox. So the way you execute it, the way it will generate or can generate a report, all of that is the same as a profile. But if I open it up, you'll very quickly understand that it's a completely different animal, right? What a process plan allows me to do is to create a number of different steps that I want to run on a document. And in this example, I only have fix-ups. I am sure in this case that the fix-ups will be executed in the order that I have them in this process plan, but I can also jump between steps, and I could say, well, go to, if this fix-up is executed successfully, I want you to go to step 4 because that does something else. If it's not executed successfully, so on failure, I want you to continue with the next step. So I can do conditional processing in a process plan like this. And that gives you a lot of potential, a lot of possibilities that you don't necessarily have with a regular profile. A profile simply executes all of the fixes and the checks that you define in it. A process plan allows you to combine profiles. I can enter run a profile in here, individual pre-flight checks, fix-ups, and actions. And actions are very similar to the kind of things that you can do with the switchboard. You actually create them with the switchboard to begin with, and we'll talk more about this in the automation session on Thursday. But an action will then, for example, allow me to do image export. And this can, all these 4 things, fix-ups, checks, profiles, and actions, can be included in one of these process plans. They will be executed in the order that I have them in the plan. And if there is any conditions in there, I can say, well, if this pre-flight check finds anything, for example, then I want you to jump to that point in the process plan and execute this particular action. So this really is very simple and easy to use conditional processing for PDF files. Now, I could go into much more detail about this, but then it will be 2 hours instead of half an hour. So let me stop at that. Simply remember that you have this profile window that contains pre-flight profiles on the one hand, and it contains process plans for much more advanced processing of PDF files on the other hand, and that you can make your own checks and fixes, your own profiles, but you also have this really long list of default profiles and checks and fixes, so you could simply take one of those and use that instead. Totally up to you. Let me close this because there is one last part of functionality that I want to talk about, and that is the visualizer. Often what happens is that you run a quality control check on a PDF document, and that in the end that file seems not to be okay. And then the question is, well, will this cause problems in production or not? And let me give you a very good example. There is a very good pre-flight check in pdfToolbox for ink coverage. So I can check that my document contains no more than 270% ink, for example. Now, if that check, if you run a profile like that on a document, and if that check is triggered, that means that your document has too much ink. And then the question is it really too much? Will it cause problems in my production environment or not? How can I judge that? And the visualizer was invented to judge that. It's a way to, if you want, X-ray your PDF files and to see what is inside them. So let me open it up, increase the size of the window a little bit. And the visualizer has different modes, and we've started up in the ink coverage mode. And ink coverage has then 2 different ways to look at the document. This one is the highlighting view, and that allows me to do exactly what I said. I've set an ink limit of 270, and now it will highlight in yellow and then progressively darker shades of red. It will highlight which parts of the file are over my ink limit. And this gives me a very quick and a very visual way of seeing whether or not this document is going to be a problem. And you can see that I have all of the different colors in this file on the right-hand side. So this is a CMYK file, also including a pink Pantone color. And if I move my mouse across the document, I can see how much ink I have in different sections of that file. So this allows me, for example, to see that the text I have at the bottom and the top of the page is set in that Pantone 220C. If I move this across the orange part, it will show me that I have 296% ink in that particular spot. Of course, I can then go in and change the ink limit. I'll change it to something that is very low, and that immediately shows you how that works. My file all of a sudden is redrawn a lot more red because all of the different parts of the file are now over that ink limit of 200% that I've set. If I change the view from highlighting to topographic, then I have a different visualization of that file. And in this case, it simply shows me all of the ink on the document going from this blue that is 0 to 50% up to the dark browns that are 350, 400% and more. So again, this gives me a very clear indication of where do I have a lot of ink on a page and where not. This same ink coverage visualizer can be used to look at different things in the document. Separations, for example, a number of different ways, but let me take individual separations as an example. That shows me all of the different separations I have in this document, and for each of them, and I can use the arrow keys to run through them, for each of them it shows me how that separation looks. And if you look on the right-hand side, it will also show me, in this particular case, total area coverage. So what it tells me is that in the case of yellow, I have 26 square centimeters that are rendered with that yellow color. So this is ink separation, area coverage information that can be very, very useful in files if you want to know how much ink a particular file is going to use. You can see that here in the visualizer by simply scrolling through these separations. If I run pre-flight on a document, and again, this is more something for the automation session on Thursday, but if I run pre-flight, I can make sure that this information is also included in the XML report that is generated by the pre-flight. And that would be a way to have area coverage information automatically in my workflow. Moving on, I can use the same visualization technique to look at image resolution and detect problems with image resolution. I can use it to detect very small objects, and this is a very good document. It doesn't have small objects. I can highlight text, I can highlight lines, so hairlines, and I can also look at safety zone. So the red line that you see here is the trim box, and this will let me identify which text, for example, comes too close to the trim box. But I can also, it's the wrong one, this one, bleed. I can also focus on the bleed and make sure that the elements in my file, if they come too close to the red line, actually also provide bleed. And the last one is, this is very similar to what you have in Acrobat, is output preview, where I can choose a simulation profile and where it will render that document using that simulation profile. And again, I have ink percentages on here as well. That runs me up to half an hour, but I'm going to cheat and use 5 minutes extra because there is one last piece of technology or one feature that I want to show you because it's very cool, and that is the image comparison or PDF comparison rather. If I have two PDF files, and this is one example, I'll see if I can show you another example in a second. This is one example where I have two files that are the same, except that they are not really the same. And then the question, of course, is what is different? And if I go to View and then Compare Documents, this will give me the same kind of preview of the document. So everything is grayed out, but those areas that are different between those two files are now colored in red. And I can zoom in. There is a very suspicious looking spot here. And actually, this was color retouch on the yellow of the car, and the retoucher forgot a little piece in this area. So this does comparison between the two files. The way this is done is by doing a pixel by pixel comparison. So the two documents are rendered, and then those two rendered files are compared pixel by pixel. So whatever changes in this PDF file, whether it is objects that are moved or deleted, or whether it's simply color changes, anything that changes in this PDF file will be highlighted. And to show you that, let me show you a different file. In this case, I'm looking at two versions of an advertisement. If I look at them simply side by side, if I look really well, I can see that there are differences. If I look at them in a comparison mode, of course, I can see the differences more easily. And again, zooming in will show me what exactly happened. In this case, font embedding was done. The font embedding was done in such a way that something went wrong in the document and some characters shifted, other characters disappeared. The bottom line is this comparison feature allows me to detect that. And while it's very easy, of course, to have this in a visual way, so as an operator, I can sit behind my computer, open two documents, and see what is different. Of course, I can also do this automatically. If you want to know how that works, you'll have to come back on Thursday. I'll give you one hint. If you create a pre-flight profile in pdfToolbox, I can include a pre-flight check that does this kind of visual comparison already. So I could run a number of dangerous or potentially dangerous things in a pre-flight profile and then compare the before and the after file and make sure that they are not different. Good. I think that uses up just about all of the time that I had. You understand that this is only a small preview of what you can do with the tool. Let me recap that very, very quickly. You have the switchboard that gives you an overview of all of the different functionality in pdfToolbox, but in a very easy to use way. You have the profiles window and then, of course, checks and fixes that allows you to create custom corrections to run on a PDF file or custom checks to run on a PDF file. And you can bundle those two either in a pre-flight profile that will generate you a report, or I can build a process plan. And that process plan was the way to do conditional processing in a or on a PDF file. And then one step beyond that, I have the visualizing tools that allow me to inspect a file in a very visual way, either for ink coverage, looking at separations, looking at image resolution, hairlines, small text, looking at safety zones and bleeds, or doing an output preview or comparing two versions of a document to see where the differences were. That just about concludes what I wanted to cover. Besides that, let me remind you that we have a partner event where resellers and end users are welcome, and where there will be much more detailed sessions and training on pdfToolbox and also on some of the other technology that we distribute and deal with. That is coming up. You'll find all of the information on our website if you're interested in that. Good, then we're going to conclude things here. If you have any other questions, please don't be afraid to send them to me or to us, and we will be happy to thank you all very much. I look forward to seeing you on a next webinar, and have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.